Hello, welcome to V2K Photography. And what is ISO? ISO is a term given by International Organization for Standardization, which is an organization that sets standard values for various things. They just came up with this ISO term to avoid confusion between the various languages. So ISO is common in all the languages, ISO. It doesn't matter what ISO stands for, but what really matters is what it does. Most of the DSLR cameras I've seen so far has an ISO button in it. All you have to do is just push the button and turn the dial. In this camera, the ISO button is here. Just push it and turn this dial. I'll have to see the numbers changing. It's quite simple, isn't it? How ISO affects the pictures. Let's take a couple of pictures of this flower vase here with different ISOs and see how they turn out. For this lighting condition, and I'm using a 50mm lens, I'll be setting the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, to avoid camera shakes. Let's see, starting from 60. As we can see, increasing the ISO brightens the picture and decreasing the ISO darkens the picture. But wait a minute, isn't this what we saw in the aperture video? Increasing the aperture brightens the picture, bringing in more light. Decreasing the aperture brings in less light and darkens the picture. So is ISO and aperture one and the same? No. Aperture affects the depth of field, but ISO does not. Aperture does not bring down the quality of the pictures, but ISO does it big time. Take a look at the pictures shot at 100, 800, 3200 and 6400. All these pictures are zoomed at 100%. So as we increase the ISO, the pictures tend to become more grainy. This is called digital noise in photography, because the brightening of the pictures is done digitally, that is, by increasing the sensitivity of the sensor. So as a general thumb rule, please set your ISOs always at the lowest numbers possible. For this camera it's ISO 100, so let me set the ISO at 100 and leave it there, just forget it. Do not change the value unless it's absolutely necessary. But where would I know if it's necessary to increase the ISO? Let's look at that on a case-by-case basis. We tend to increase the ISO only when there is not enough light in the room. So in this case, this is an indoor room, so not much light here. Let's take pictures of the same flower vase and see what the camera has to suggest. The camera suggests me a shutter speed of 1/6 of a second. And mind you, I'm using a 50mm lens. So shooting at 1/6 of a second, let's shoot it, what's the big deal? Yes, shooting at 1/6 of a second will give me camera shake. So what do? I increase the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second to have a shutter speed more than the focal length that I'm using. So increasing the shutter speed to 1/60th of a second, the picture turns out dark. So what do? We increase the aperture? No, I'm not going to do that because I need to have all the flowers in sharp focus. If I increase the aperture, I'll only get a portion of the flower in focus. Increasing the aperture decreases the depth of field. So for this, I need a depth of field of at least 5.6 aperture to get all the flowers in sharp focus. What do? There is no other go. I can't bring in more light into this room. This is when we increase the ISO. Increasing the ISO enables you to increase your shutter speed too. Just remember this, if you're doubling your ISO, you can double your shutter speed too. For instance, if at ISO 100 your camera suggests a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second, if you change the ISO from 100 to 200, you can increase the shutter speed from 50 to 100, so on and so forth. So in this case, for 1/60th of a second, I need to increase the ISO to 800 and the picture has turned out bright and no camera shake. Everything's really fine. What if your subject is moving? For instance, this is a toy fan my wife owns, and let's say I need to freeze the blades in action. For this, I need to have a shutter speed of 1/4000th of a second. I just measured it to save you some time. If I took a picture at 1/4000th of a second, let's see what happens. Okay, the camera is set at 1/4000th of a second, aperture is 2.8, it's larger aperture, and the ISO is 100. Let's see. Trust me, it's a picture. The picture is really dark because the shutter speed was really high. So let's see what the camera suggests. The camera suggests a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. So let's set the camera at 1/50th of a second and shoot the same picture. Alright, the picture is sharp now, but the thing is, the blade has shown motion blur. I need to freeze the blade in action. So what do? I need to increase the shutter speed. I can't make the aperture any larger. So what do? The only option is to brighten the picture, increasing the ISO. To do that, let me set the camera in aperture priority mode, so I'll have a constant aperture. The aperture is set at 2.8 now. The camera will calculate the shutter speeds on its own. All I have to do is just change the ISO now. Pushing the ISO all the way to 3200 now and try to take the same picture. We can see the two blades now, but still there is some motion blur. Let's increase the ISO again. I'm increasing the ISO to 6400 now, and let's see. Now that's more like it. Pushing the ISO up to 6400 has enabled me to reach a shutter speed of 4000th of a second, and the blades are frozen in action. You don't have a tripod. If you don't have a tripod and you're in a low light situation, the camera will tend to bring down the shutter speed. Bringing down the shutter speed will increase the chances of camera shake. To avoid camera shake, if you increase the shutter speed, the pictures will be dark. So what do? We increase the ISO to increase the shutter speed. Let's say I'm taking a picture of a group of people, let's say 10 or 15 people, and I want every one of them in sharp focus. So what do? I set my aperture at f11 to have a deep depth of field, so everyone will be in focus. But setting at f11 brings in less light. So what do? I tend to slow down my shutter speed to compensate for that loss of light. But slowing down the shutter speed will increase my chances of getting a camera shake, and I don't want that. So I increase my shutter speed again. The picture will be darker again. So what do? We increase the ISO to brighten the picture. If you desperately need or require to show grain in your picture, increase your ISO. So 99% of the times we increase the ISO to achieve a fast enough shutter speed. The remaining 1%, I don't really know. I just say 99 to be on the safer side. We just saw that increasing the ISO will add more noise to the picture, degrading the quality of the picture. So how much ISO is really tolerable? That really depends on the camera. In basic DSLR cameras such as Nikon D3000 or D5000 series, the noise will be noticeable right from ISO 800 and above. In cameras such as D750 or D810, the ISO can be pushed up to 3200 and still have a good enough picture. Yeah, I've seen excellent pictures at 3200 or even at 6400. In professional or higher end cameras such as D3 or D4, I've seen excellent photographs taken at ISO 12800. They have an enormous ISO performance. Well, that's it for today, guys. You know what to do. Give us a thumbs up and share with your friends if you like the video, and do not forget to hit the subscribe button for future updates. And if you'd like to support me, please do so on patreon.com/v2k photography, and I'll be so grateful. Thanks for your time and attention. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care. Bye-bye. So how increasing and decreasing the sensitivity of